Drag your beastly bodies onto the nearest slab and stretch out. I'm set to go for some gear fear. So follow the example set by the hero of this tale and just get into the spirit of the thing. During one of the hottest nights of last summer, a strange figure was observed making his way down Manhattan's West 17th Street, staggering unsteadily and at length climbing with great awkwardness up the stairs of a rooming house on the block. The stranger's ascent up the old building stairs was clumsy and noisy. It was a dry season, but witnesses later recalled trailings of mud and damp earth were left behind on the steps. "What are you, drunk? What's the racket?" With great difficulty, the heavily bundled figure at last reached the attic room rented by a university student, Michael Rogers. He at once commenced an unrelieved pounding and beating on the door. "Stop this minute, or I'm calling the super." The sound of splintering wood brought most of the house to the stairs, only to be followed by a human sound far more dreadful. Yarg! Noise of a violent struggle rent the night. "No! No!" And on the street, observers saw the attic room plunged into pitch darkness. Then there was a fearful silence. When no further sound ensued, the building superintendent inched open the room's broken door, his trembling hand fumbling for the light switch. "Rogers! The lights! Don't turn them on, for God's sake!" To what was obviously little avail, the student was made comfortable as possible. "Someone get a doctor. This man's dying." "Don't bother. It's all right. It doesn't matter now." Rogers, where'd he go? How did a thing like this happen?" "How? Started with Professor Jerome at school. The professor was doing a paper on hypnotism. He'd asked for student volunteers to assist his subjects. Now, when I snap my fingers, you'll wake up, Michael. Ready? Now." "So, go okay this time, Professor?" "I've never seen anyone respond to hypnosis as you have. You're the perfect subject. That's why I'm using you for my most important experiment. I've waited years for the opportunity. Now with you, it can be done. Long-range thought transfer through hypnotic trance. Your mind, your spirit will answer my call." Isn't this risky this soon?" "Time is short. The chance may never come again. I've already given you a post-hypnotic suggestion. It must be tonight." Suddenly, for the first time since aiding the professor in his studies, I felt afraid. Yet it was already too late. The suggestion had been planted in my mind. And at midnight, it took effect. I felt myself slipping into a trance, spinning deeper and deeper and deeper. Bong, 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 bong. Never had I felt so strongly drawn into a trance, and then I suddenly felt free, able to float, drift, look down upon myself in my room. It's working. More than just thought transfer, my whole spirit's cut loose from my body. The sight swirled and vanished. Now I was moving, searching, following a command. "Michael, this way, Michael. You must come. Professor Jerome." Got to move toward his voice. I was moving through a strange half-world, a world of mist and shadow, terrible shadows with melting faces of cloaked horror, nebulous monstrosities floating, drifting, watching. Finally, my destination was in sight. I had reached my goal, even though the command was no longer being given. "Professor! Professor!" For the most logical of reasons. Dead. Heart attack. The strain must have been too great for him. All-consuming dread sent me racing back through the mists and terrible shadows, back to that solid comfort I'd been pulled out of, back to the comfort of my own. But there was no comfort, only horror, the greatest horror of all. Gone! My body is gone. I fled, stricken with panic, yet instinctively I was drawn to the answer. Hello, Michael. Don't be so surprised. I can sense your presence. I'm attuned to that sort of thing. The voice was mine. The body was mine, but the spirit moving and motivating it belonged to Professor Jerome. I knew I was going to die. You can't blame me for grabbing a healthy young body. Too bad you left your spirit out of it, but then I planned it that way, didn't I? Rather like losing at musical chairs. Hey, Michael, won't be seeing much more of you. Living spirits without bodies tend to become like those shadow creatures. I watched helplessly as Jerome strolled away with my body, my life, that he had stolen. Jerome! Jerome, please! I was trapped, doomed to wander for eternity in that horrible half-world until I dissolved into part of it. Trapped, doomed without a body. How long I floated in that limbo of shadows and mist, I can't be sure. But finally, it came to me, a body. There is a spiritless body I can use. More time passed as I searched, but I had purpose, determination, and eventually I found what I was looking for. The thing was not easy, but I now had a body, and slowly but surely the awful decaying thing began to work for me. Harder, harder, now. Too much time had gone by. The thing that had once been Professor Jerome's body moved awkwardly and with great difficulty. Hardly enough muscle left to obey my spirit urging it forward. Even as I moved it, the thing was collapsing under me. Minute particles, slowly dropping away. Yet I had to keep going, on to Manhattan and Professor Jerome. Yeah! I hurtled the loathsome thing forward, groping with bony fingers for the living flesh that was my own, clawing and striking. No! No! Little by little, my decaying instrument of revenge was crumbling into nothing. Still I pounded, hit, smashed, gouged. At last it had its effect. Jerome would not let his spirit be trapped in the battered, dying shell. He abandoned the body. My body. My body. Mine! He's dead. A story. It couldn't be true, could it? Subsequent interviews failed to determine which person actually turned on the light. Oh my God! But all present later agreed it had been the most hideous mistake in what was considered to be an evening of horrors. If that thing is all that's left of Jerome's body, then his spirit. Speculation considering the spirit of Professor Walden Jerome ended abruptly when his own words to the dismembered Michael Rogers were recalled. Living spirits without bodies tend to become like those shadow creatures. See what happened to Jerome? He was just a fellow who'd rather switch than fight. Now that he's just a shadow of his former self, oh well. On to my next tingling issue. That's the spirit.